Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or of course, if you are watching on our rapidly growing YouTube channel, AJ, and I'm going to add this real quick. Sorry about this, guys. Only about 45 subscribers away from 10K. I want to hit it today. It's a Saturday. I want to hit it today. So only 40 subscribers. If you're watching this video right now and you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button so we can hit that 10K. We're getting there, guys. I got to keep plugging that. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from Philadelphia, once again in the Wells Fargo Center, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, another busy day for you is just got done with Carolina's Elite Eight pre-St. Peter's press conferences. You even got a few breakout interviews with the players as well. If you want to see those press conferences and interviews, click our YouTube channel below, link in the description to find all that, and head on over to our website, TarHeelIllustrated.com. Amazing time to sign up for just $8.33 a month. There's so much going on, not only with basketball season, football recruiting. David's had a ton of scoops on Gigi Jackson. There's just a ton of things going on right now at our website. So if you want some more content, premium content, extra content that you can't get unless you're signed up, click the link, in the description below. Just $8.33 a month. Great time to do so, but make sure you do that after this video is done, of course. But AJ, before we dive into the St. Peter's matchup, we're going to kind of have this podcast as a look back at the press conferences, some insights and observations like we've done a few times already during the NCAA tournament. And then we'll do a quick look ahead to the St. Peter's game. So this is kind of a 2-for-1 podcast, I want to call it. Before we dive into St. Peter's, though, give us some insights, some observations from what you saw during all 5 starters and Hubert Davis's press conference, and give us a little insight from the breakout interviews, because I was able to watch those as well and thought you got some really interesting stuff from a couple of guys in particular.
And I was in there for St. Peter's. Mm-hmm. They had 6 players at the dais, not just the starting 5. And then Shaheen Holloway, the head coach, was up there. My observations, my takeaways from these interviews is that both teams are it's the next game. Mm-hmm. They're not going to build it up too high. I kind of like St. Peter's approach that, they've already played Kentucky. They're not really looking at the laundry. And maybe if Carolina has a big 12-0 type run and maybe they start looking at laundry on Sunday, who knows? But they've already played Kentucky. They've already had a laundry game. So this will be another one. Maybe, and Carolina's an 8 seed, Kentucky's a 2. So if you look at things based on that, as if they mean anything, then they've already been here, done that. However, they're not looking at things as far as seeds go, and neither are the Tar Heels. And that's my takeaway. These clubs don't care what the seeds are. Combined, an 8 seed versus 15 seed in a regional final is combined the lowest seed or highest number, if you will, regional final in history, 23. 8 plus 15 is 23. The previous low was 20 in 2018 when Loyola Chicago as an 11 played Kansas State as a 9 in the regional final, and Loyola won that game, as many people probably remember. So This is going to be 23. So neither one of these teams have paid attention to seeds from the beginning, and they're not going to change that now. Hubert told Carolina, some of the players were saying today, that he told them when the tournament started, I don't care what our seed is. I don't care who we're playing, what their seed is. Our job is to prepare and win the next game. Play defense, don't turn the ball over, and rebound. Same stuff he's been saying since October. That is the mantra. That's how they're moving forward. And St. Peter's is doing the same thing. St. Peter's is a club, Jacob, that lost to some really bad teams during the season, but they figured stuff out a lot like Carolina did, and they don't want to do anything to stray from that mode. So my takeaway today is these are 2 teams that are locked in. They're going about business the exact same way they have now for 10 days, 10 days, 11 days in this tournament. And they're not changing one bit, because so far what they've been doing is working. So it is a proven formula for both of them. So that was basically my takeaway. My other takeaways were that, the Tar Heels are suddenly in a position of being the favored team. They were favored, I think, against Marquette, but not by much. They were an underdog against Baylor. They were an underdog against UCLA, and now they're going to be a favorite. And for the first time in a while, they're playing a program that these kids probably didn't know much about, if anything. Maybe RJ did, since they're Jersey City and he's the other side of Manhattan. So maybe he had some familiarity. But the St. Peter's kids have plenty of familiarity with New York, with Carolina, but they don't seem fazed by it. So they're gonna roll it out there and they're gonna play. And I think this was probably the least eventful Elite Eight media day, in part because the breakout sessions were so short, 15 minutes total for 5 kids in different rooms. So I couldn't get to all 5. So I chose RJ, Caleb, and Armando because I'm working on a couple of specific stories. And I got some good stuff there. If you want me to hit on that, I'll be more than happy to, because especially the Caleb stuff.
Yeah. Dive into Caleb a little bit, because I was able to listen to those interviews. And I thought, for instance, with Caleb, I thought you had some really good just one-on-one time essentially with him, where you guys kind of went through yesterday. And I love the question you ask about kind of, do you play better when you mentioned the Louisville game, when you kind of saw Caleb starting to jar with the crowd a little bit and get involved with the scenery. And it seems like you asked him, Caleb kind of thrives in that environment. So dive into those breakout interviews.
He smiled.
Yeah.
We don't get a lot of smiles from Caleb for our questions on the media, in part because crap's been on Zoom mostly. Now we're in person and we're up close. So it's so much better. I cannot impress upon you how much better it is. But yeah, that's what I asked him about. Because, we've been saying on these podcasts that when when he's out there yapping away, when he's out there jawing and he's flexing and he's gyrating and he's screaming and he's, this stuff, the 3 for the fingers for the 3-pointers, and he's yelling at fans in the stands, that kind of thing, that's when he's on his game. And Hubert lets it happen because that's Caleb's game. Everybody's got their different dial-in. Some guys are stoic. You don't know whether they're winning by 20 or losing by 20. You don't know whether they're frustrated or they're totally in a mental groove and nothing affects them. With Caleb, you kind of see both. He was struggling a little bit in the first half last night, and you could see it on his face and his body language a little bit. But, man, when he was rolling, he let everybody on the UCLA team know. And anybody who was wearing that shade of blue and yellow in the stands had to know. Not like he was targeting them, but he just kind of has a way of lathering it on. And I thought it was a really mature comment today when he said, I'm not trying to do that to get on them. I'm doing it because it fuels me.
Yeah.
And that's what we've seen. You go back to Louisville, he has that horrible turnover at the end of regulation, but he hits a 3 right at the start of overtime, right? That's a moxie moment. He didn't have a great game against Clemson, but he has the drive and the dish to Brady for the game-winning basket. You go to the end of Pittsburgh, where he did everything in his power to try to bring that team back late. It was the worst loss of the season, and I think it was the ultimate turning point of the season, which is something Brady Manick said today. But the next game may have been the game where they realized, okay, we are different. That was our bottoming out. Now we're springing forward because they won in Blacksburg, and Caleb wanted the ball. He demanded the ball in the last minute. He ended up hitting 6 or 6 from the free throw line in the last minute to salt that game away. We saw what he did against Syracuse, et cetera. So and when he's doing that, when he's at Clemson, he's jawing with the students. When he's at Louisville, he's jawing with the students. When he's at Virginia Tech and Castle Coliseum, the students are on top of you. He's jawing with the students. That's his game. Mm-hmm. And he acknowledged it. He smiled because that is his game, and it fuels him. I don't think he probably realizes 100% exactly what he's doing when he's doing it, in the sense that this is my game. I'm lost in it. I'm doing stuff. He hasn't crossed the line. I mean, there have been some interesting words said, but not before interesting words have been said to him from opposing student bodies, which we've talked about. Some stuff I'm not going to make public, Louisville in particular, but he feeds off of it. Mm-hmm. And I like guys that feed off that. I like when you see kind of Caleb just getting revved up. And I asked RJ about it. RJ's like, yeah, I've seen it when we do our runs in the, open run, open gym, which they call open run, like in May and June. He sees it then. And I thought a signature moment last night was Caleb scored in the lane, and he just ran down the court flexing. And when I told him about that again, Caleb smiled because that's his game. So everyone turns to something different to get them going, to fuel them. And, Brady's a yeller, a screamer, a cusser. Mm-hmm. And I've heard stories about his family being the same.
You can see it on TV. You can even see it on TV. It's pretty evident.
Yeah, they were near me in Fort Worth for the Baylor game. And and that's fine. That's who they are. I
like that kind of stuff. Yeah, I like that kind of stuff.
It's a sporting event. It's a sporting event. It's not choir practice. It's okay if things are like that. Mm-hmm. And we're seeing the demonstrative nature of these Tar Heels come out, which means they have broken free from a lot of other things, and they're fully comfortable being themselves on the floor. And I think Caleb is exhibit A.
Yeah, and if you guys want to see some more examples of Caleb getting kind of lost in the moment, just go watch his high school tape. I mean, that was one thing that stood out about me when recruiting him out of high school was he was so fun to watch because he got so into everything and was a guy who liked to get the crowd involved and flex and, poke that lip up a little bit and let people know that he's the man out here. And I love that kind of stuff. Any type of sport, I love guys
more
like
than that. And I think more than that, people know that we've talked about having screw you guys, right?
Yeah.
And there was a time
gotta have them, man. You gotta have them.
But they've got 4 screw you guys now.
Mm-hmm.
And Caleb is the ultimate screw you guy because when RJ is going for 30, he's doing nothing other than just playing the game. He's not one of those chest pounders, and he'll yell and stuff like that, but he doesn't have the theatrics that Caleb does. Caleb can just get under people's skin. He was getting under UCLA's skin a little bit last night when he was doing that stuff because it's bad enough a guy just hit a 24-foot, behind the back dribble 3 against you. You shouldn't have shot, but it went in anyway. But then he's screaming his head off and flexing down the court. So it's a little harder to detach from the basket when the guy's reminding you of it as you're going back in transition on offense. So there is value. There is extra value in addition to the points when a guy does stuff like that. And I would imagine tomorrow against St. Peter's, if he's in that mode, I mean, the St. Peter's kids have dealt with it too at various levels. A lot of these guys have played at the highest AAU circuit, so they've been around it. But it's different on this stage, in this building, with a chance to go to the Final Four, and you've got one of those fabled laundry teams across the way, and they're screaming and yelling and hitting shots. So that will be one of the tasks that St. Peter's will have to deal with tomorrow.
Yeah, and let's dive into the Peacocks right now because obviously we're going to look ahead to that matchup too. So number 15 seed St. Peter's sitting at 22-11 on the season have been the Cinderella of this year's tournament. There always seems to be 1 or 2 teams that every season kind of make that run that aren't supposed to make that run, for lack of a better word. And St. Peter's is the program that's been able to do that this season. Coached by Shaheen Holloway, took over in 2018. I was able to see some of his press conference on TV as well. And you mentioned the connection with RJ Davis. Somebody actually asked him about RJ Davis, and you could tell that he, from the New York area, seen him play at Stepinac High School, which is a really good basketball program up there. And he had a lot of really high words to say about RJ and the type of player and how good he is. So I thought that connection was pretty interesting. Guys that seem pretty familiar with each other. But to get back on track, let's talk about how St. Peter's got here before we dive into what Carolina and St. Peter's need to do to kind of win this game. Finished second place in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference. Won their conference tournament, obviously, to get here, beating Monmouth. Carolina fans are familiar with that program. King Rice, the head coach, Walker Miller, a former Tar Heel, had a really good season for them this year as a graduate transfer. Looking at what they've done in the NCAA tournament specifically, started out with that big win over number 2 seed Kentucky, then beat 7th seed Murray State to get to the Sweet 16, and then obviously on Friday night, beat number 3 seed Purdue to get to the Elite Eight. So Cinderella run for them, a team that just continues to win games, a team that, we'll talk about it here in a second, statistically in some areas just gets dominated, but continues to find ways to win. And we'll talk about that here in a second because doing a little bit of a deeper dive into St. Peter's versus UNC, what that kind of matchup looks like. There's 2 things that I think Carolina really is going to look to take advantage of, two things that Carolina does well that St. Peter's doesn't necessarily do well on the other end. And they're not going to out-rebound North Carolina. As an example to that, in the Purdue game, I believe they were out-rebounded. Let me see where it is. I got it in my notes right here. Bear with me, guys. St. Peter's was out-rebounded in -16 in rebound margin against Purdue. Still won that game. So that's been a kind of consistent theme throughout the NCAA tournament. They've got some guys that have length. I mean, it's not just a bunch of guards running out there. They do have a couple guys down low. They do have some guys that are bigger that can get to the boards. But it's a team that has been out-rebounded in a majority of the games, but still continues to find ways to win. So that's one thing that I think Carolina's going to look to take advantage of. And the second thing I think Carolina's going to look to take advantage of is their ball movement. Carolina's been a really good 3-point shooting team this season, especially during this run. I think they've hit 34 threes in the tournament so far alone. It's been a team that really has thrived on their outside shooting. Go look at the second half against UCLA as a prime example with what Caleb Love was able to do. Now, St. Peter's has a pretty strong perimeter defense. They like to press. They like to get after you. That's one of their strengths. But Carolina's ball movement, I think, is something that can really help them get some better shots and some open looks because Carolina is a team, as we've seen it many times this year, really has a good ability to move the ball quickly and get guys open looks. So I think for Carolina, it starts, if you can dominate the glass, if you can get some good ball movement in there and hit some outside shots, I think you've got a really good chance to beat this St. Peter's team. But this is a Cinderella team right now, AJ. And, it's going to be a Carolina team playing with a little bit more pressure, for lack of a better word, than a St. Peter's team who, let's be honest, they're really not supposed to be here right now, but it's been a fantastic run for them.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of pressure on Carolina because you don't want to be the next team to lose to St. Peter's. But the fact that they've beaten Kentucky and Purdue, and Kentucky routed Carolina and Purdue beat Carolina, is all you need to grab Carolina's attention. I mean, they're earlier in the year when they were kind of wobbling back and forth with how dialed in they were very much a results-based team as far as, well, we'll respect this team because they beat that club, or we won't respect them because they lost to that club. All they know is that in the last week and a half, they've beaten Kentucky and Purdue. So that ought to be plenty to get Carolina's attention. And I think that the Tar Heels have a chip too. The Tar Heels talk very openly about being disrespected and people saying that they're not tough and people saying they're not this, they don't defend and all those things. Brady Manick doesn't defend. Well, Brady Manick shut down Jaime Jaquez in the second half Friday night. The Tar Heels were grittier than UCLA on Friday night. That's UCLA's calling card. They're a rock fight team, and Carolina beat them in a rock fight. So I think St. Peter's will try to make it maybe not a rock fight. I was talking to somebody in the press room. I said it's more like a gnat fight. Like the way St. Peter's was frustrating the crap out of Purdue. It's like when you go outside and it's just in the summer and there's always like this school of gnats around. You can't get out of it and you can't see very well. You don't want to breathe very well. You don't want to open your mouth because one's going to fly in your mouth and they frustrate you. Whatever's going on, you just want to get out of the way of all those gnats. You can recalibrate and say, okay, wherever I was going to do, go to the mailbox, whatever it is, now I can go. I thought that they were a bunch of gnats to Purdue last night. Purdue could never get out of that trap. They couldn't get away. They couldn't swat them away. So if they're doing that to Carolina guards, and speak of the devil, a gnat just flies right in front of me, or something that looks like a gnat. Imagine bugs in the arena in Philly. That's a shocker. I better be quiet because who knows who can hear me here. But, Carolina's guards, if they get kind of drawn out of a comfort zone, here it comes over here again. If they get drawn out of a comfort zone and it's gnat-like and they're bothered that way, that will absolutely play to St. Peter's favor. That's what they have to do. They can't let Carolina be Carolina and try to beat them straight up like that. They have to pull them out of their comfort zone, and it begins with the guards. If you screw up the guards, then the entries are tougher. Finding Brady in the corner is tougher. The ball reversal stuff is tougher and all of that. And you turn them literally into a bounce, jump, shoot team, bounce a couple of times, floater team. And I don't think that that's Carolina's best approach at beating anybody. So, and pardon me again, because this one guy is determined to earn his letter at St. Peter's here.
Yeah, he heard you talking about it.
Absolutely. So that's, I think, what will be the approach. But, what's interesting, at this point in time, everybody's supremely confident, right? St. Peter's has won 10 in a row. Their last loss was against Siena, and they all said that was sort of a turning point for them. Shaheen Holloway, the head coach, said that he totally blamed himself for that. So he didn't coach a good game, didn't have him ready, and learned a lot and applied what he learned that night from that point forward, and they've been a different team. So statistically, whatever they were before that, I'm going to disregard a lot of those things because they're a different team. It doesn't matter if they get out-rebounded by 16 by Purdue because they still beat Purdue. So sometimes – the straight stat line doesn't always make sense in the NCAA tournament because emotion is such a huge part of it. And these guys have emotion on their side, and they'll have that in the building tomorrow as well. Another couple of things. We'll go back and look at their non-conference just to give a snapshot about what they've done, their body of work the last 4 months. They only had 3 quality non-conference opponents, right? They lost to VCU by 3, I think I wrote it down here. They lost to St. John's by 21, and they lost by 14 to Providence. So not entirely blown out. They also did lose, though, to a team, St. Francis. I think it was St. Francis of New York, which finished 331 in the NET. They lost to Stony Brook. They're 233 in the NET. They lost to Rider, 243. Lost to Canisius, the Golden Griffins, 258. But here they are. So people love to talk about the great story that is North Carolina overcoming all that crap from earlier in the year. Look, this club's done the same thing. So, their efficiency rating on offense is not that high, but their efficiency rating on KenPom is 24 in defense. A lot of it's because they disrupt your offense. They don't let you run smooth stuff. So that'll be Carolina's test. And let me throw one other little nugget here for you. This is pretty cool, and I had some fun with this. Carolina's last 8 wins are over programs that have won national championships. going back to 1977. So you think about it, Mark. In this period, you go back to Louisville, NC State. You've got Syracuse, Duke, Virginia, Marquette, Baylor, UCLA. They've all won national titles since 1977. They've combined to play in 21 national title games since 1977. So the Tar Heels have been playing culture. They've been playing brands. They've been playing history. They've been playing programs that hang stuff up in their rafters, right? Tomorrow they're playing a club that Carolina's never played before, probably a school that outside of R.J. Davis, none of the Tar Heels had heard of until a week and a half ago, if even that. But here's an interesting twist in this whole national championship run. There's a guy named Matthew Lee for St. Peter's. He starts. He's a guard. His father, and the old timers will know exactly what I'm talking about when I say his name here. His father is Butch Lee. Butch Lee was the most outstanding player of the 1977 Final Four for Marquette when they beat North Carolina in the national championship game.
What a connection.
So the crazy world of college basketball, where if you connect enough dots, you're going to find yourself back where you started from. That's the case here. They've had 8 straight wins against programs that have won national titles. And tomorrow they get a chance to go to the Final Four. They're going to play a team that Hubert's uncle's most disappointing loss ever was the 1977 title game against Marquette. And the MOP of that game, his son will be on the court for St. Peter's tomorrow. Fascinating.
You gotta love sports, man. You gotta love sports.
I got goosebumps, man. I love this stuff.
Yeah.
I love connecting these dots. I love the history of this sport. And I got goosebumps just thinking about that because I had no idea when I woke up today, which, by the way, was about 3 hours after I went to bed. It followed my last thing. I had no idea. And I love that. I absolutely love that. I found out within the last hour and a half, there have been some stories. New York Post has a pretty cool story about it. So people should Google it and they'll find a few stories. Matthew Lee is his name. His father's Butch Lee. It's a pretty neat stuff. He was actually, what triggered me to think about it, Jacob, was in their presser. Somebody asked him a question about, does your dad tell stories about his game against Carolina? His last name was Lee. And I'm thinking, Lee? I never would have thought that Butch Lee, who played in 77, I mean, kind of, older father, have a kid in college. I was thinking maybe Keith Lee, but they didn't play Carolina. I mean, he was at Memphis. So I looked it up and I found it. And that's a really, really cool nugget.
That is awesome. That's fantastic, AJ. Good stuff there. Looking forward to the matchup tomorrow. I mean, you got 2 of the hottest teams in the country right now. I don't think anybody would argue against that. You got a team that won 10 straight and a team in Carolina that's just been railing off victories over the last month and a half or so. So looking forward to the matchup, looking forward to seeing an underdog, like you mentioned, versus a blue blood. That's what makes sports fun. And this is what makes March so special.
And this blue blood is different. And the reason I think they're different than Purdue is because they can score.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of Carolina's big advantages.
Carolina's wing perimeter, outside stuff, outside in, inside out, is better than Purdue's. And it's quite frankly better than what Kentucky's was at the end of the year. They weren't the same team after THI Washington got hurt. So I think Carolina is the better of those 3.
Yeah.
Right now, this day. So it's going to be more of a challenge. And while I think that St. Peter's can have some success against Carolina's guards, kind of causing some issues, and they can double down on Armando. They got a lot of swats on the ball, dropping guards last night. But the one thing they haven't seen yet is Brady Manek. They haven't seen the 6'10" pro. There are a lot of coaches, a lot of people I'm talking to that are, prominent in the sport the last couple of weeks are calling him an NBA player.
Oh,
6'10", catch and shoot guy who can pass and who's showing me he can defend some too. They call him an NBA player. Nobody's got that. No one has that. Carolina does. I think that'll be the difference. If he hits, he doesn't have to go for 30, but if he can force them to change how they defend some, then that'll be enough because then Carolina's talent will take over.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, we've talked about this a lot and what makes Carolina so dangerous in March and why we always thought this team had a chance is because you've essentially got 4 guys out there that could go off any night. And we've seen that in this tournament. Brady Manek essentially against Marquette, and then you had RJ Davis against Baylor, Caleb Love against UCLA. So I think that's another dangerous factor that St. Peter's, I know they're a good defensive team and how they're able to disrupt things. That's kind of been their mantra in the tournament run. But I don't think they've seen a team like that has guys that can just kind of go off all over the court.
Yeah, and I think Armando could be that guy tomorrow. And I'll tell you why. Sitting up close watching Purdue last night, Zach Edey's not very skilled. He's not.
He didn't impress me a lot last night either.
He's not like he had 2 dunks. He traveled both times. He did little pitter patter steps. He traveled both times. Should have been called. Wasn't. And then Williams, he would slowly back the defender in and make a move. Armando's far more decisive with his moves. He's far more skilled. He goes up higher than Williams, and he's a hell of a lot more skilled than Edey. So he is unlike those two. He's a big, and some of their kids were asked about Armando today. Like, well, we don't really care about height. Height doesn't mean anything to us. Okay, but Armando's a lot more than height. Armando's a great hip. We've been talking about Armando's hip since November. And a hip is an underrated thing in basketball in the post, because if he's got a 6'9" guy guarding him who isn't used to banging regularly with dudes like that, and he can get him on his hip, and their bigs are not thick. They're not very thick. One of them's got some decent thickness, but he's not super toned. Armando could have a big day. If Brady can hit a couple threes and the guards force St. Peter's to kind of cover them one-on-one without scrambling around doing a lot of that stuff, you put Armando in one-on-one situations, they could dump that thing into him, and I think he can have a big game. Because I know she was a fantastic player, and I believe he had some pretty good numbers, but they didn't complement it. You got to complement the interior. You can't just dump it into Armando and advance that way. You have to complement it. So if they get enough stuff on the perimeter, Armando could be the next guy to get 30.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good shout. I think Armando, too, like when you look at St. Peter's, I agree with you. I think he does have the ability, when you look at what his skill sets are against these St. Peter's bigs, to really be a big focal point and be able to make more decisive moves. I'm glad you mentioned that about Williams. That was one thing I noticed last night for Purdue. He's so methodical in his back downs. And it was like, all right, we kind of know what you're going to do here at this point. And by the time he was able to do it, I think it was a little bit easier to St. Peter's defend. Armando's a lot more decisive with it. Yeah.
And the putbacks, he's quicker with the putback than Williams is. And he gets to the ball and he's more everything than Edey is. So I could see Armando, if he goes for 25, let's say, I could see him getting, 8, 9 points, 10 points off offensive rebounds, including getting fouled and going to the line and hitting free throws. So that's going to be a big part of the game as well. If Armando's grabbing offensive rebounds early and scoring, if he's drawing a couple of fouls, all Carolina needs to hit a few threes, get that balance out there. I think they'll be in pretty good shape.
I think so too, AJ. Good place to wrap this one up. You got plenty of work to do after the open press conferences and everything. So I'll let you run. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. A little bit of breaking news, guys. We're only 35 subscribers away. I just checked if you saw my screen rattling over there. I was clicking around. Only 35 away from 10,000, AJ. So I'm very, very hopeful we're going to hit it today. It's about 5:30 p.m. right now. I want to hit it before midnight. So we'll see what happens.
And when we hit 10,000, then you can start pitching for 11,000, right?
I know, man. I'm about to get some streamers, some confetti, probably wear like a little
Carolina ends up playing Duke in the Final Four, we'll hit 11,000 by next weekend.
Oh, God. Hey, man, we always say it, but winning's great for business.
Let's not go there right now. Duke's got a test tonight.
Yeah, big test tonight.
Carolina's got a test tomorrow as well. Yeah. Carolina fans, don't be overcome.
You don't look ahead. Don't look ahead. You got a big game. This is a Cinderella team that, in a lot of ways, can't do any wrong right now. That's a dangerous opponent you face in March. So be a fun one to cover nonetheless, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. Around a 5 p.m. tip-off in Philadelphia for that one in the Wells Fargo Center. That game will be on CBS, so I know Carolina fans will be all tuned in for that one. And for all your coverage from that, keep it locked to TarIllustrated.com and our YouTube channel as well. Again, you can sign up, link in the description below, to be a premium member at our website for just $8.33 a month. Again, I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Like, share, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We're going to get to 10K today. That's my mission. Let's see if we can make it happen for me, guys. Again, thank you for watching. See you all in the next one.
Thanks.